back, everybody. We're now going to jump into our startup showcase. These companies are all startups in the post-COVID world, and during this global pandemic, we are all very much dealing with. These startups are working to get us back to normality as quickly and safely as possible. Really excited to welcome to the stage Claire Vaniel from Army Research Lab, who will kick things off with her opening remarks. Take it away, Claire.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you for joining us for the COVID Innovation Startup Showcase. I'd like to introduce this track by telling you some about our own experiences in innovating natural language processing research to address COVID-19. I'm Dr. Claire Vaniel, and I'm from Army Research Laboratory. I'm a social scientist at Adelphi Laboratory Center in Maryland, and my collaborator in this research, Dr. Stephanie Lucan, is a computer scientist at ARL West in Los Angeles. ARL is part of the Combat Capabilities Development Command, or CCDC, which sits under Army Futures Command. So SARS-CoV-2, or the novel coronavirus, is forcing incredibly rapid changes in our world. We've all experienced this, and we see it not only in our medical research, but also in our public service messaging, as well as our everyday lives. Those who are fortunate enough to are working from home, perhaps while caring for our children. And you can see here my 1.5-year-old Hunter, who has been my very fun and very challenging coworker for the past 4 months. But crisis breeds innovation. And I think it's only natural that we as researchers ask, how can we use our science or technology to help? At CCDC, we received the call to pivot our research to help battle COVID-19. And I'm proud to say that we rose to the challenge with the manufacture and delivery of PPE and antimicrobial masks, as well as additive manufacturing for swabs, and finally, the identification of potential antibodies. As a computational linguist, I began exploring how we can combine AI, machine learning, and natural language processing techniques to help. There are a few clear possibilities, including synthesizing and summarizing the massive amounts of data available on the web, including news and social media, analyzing the efficacy of public service messaging, or extracting information from and summarizing the huge and growing amounts of scientific and medical literature on coronavirus and related viruses. In my branch, we decided that we could best leverage ongoing research for this final option. So during a 6-week research sprint, which is a very short amount of time for our kind of research, we rapidly pivoted our research to develop a framework of artificial intelligence components called InfoForager. InfoForager allows scientists and medical professionals to accelerate their technical information searches. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about how this system works. First, we automatically convert or parse a natural language question into a computer-readable semantic formalism called abstract meaning representation, or AMR. AMR takes the form of a directed acyclic graph that you can see here on the bottom left. This graph captures not only the concepts of the question as nodes, but also the semantic relationships between those concepts as edges. For example, this question, what is the concentration of the virus in saliva, is represented as the concentration of something, that's the very top middle node. The thing concentrated is the virus, as represented in the left edge and node. And the quantity of that concentration is unknown, as represented in the center edge and node. And the location is in saliva, as represented in the right node and edge. Second, we use a graph matching algorithm that compares the semantic parse of the user question against the semantic parse of each sentence from a collection of medical research papers that's already been converted into this meaning representation. For example, here, the semantic representation for the user question has a great deal of overlap with the top sentence. The virus is highly concentrated in saliva, because this sentence is also talking about the concentration of the virus in saliva and the quantity of that concentration. But a sentence with many of the same words, the concentration of saliva on swabs, would not be a good candidate answer for this question, because this sentence is talking about the concentration of saliva, not the virus, and the location is different. This is very much in contrast to the state-of-the-art keyword systems that would likely consider both of these sentences good matches, since they share many of the same keywords. Our system is looking for answers that not only share the same concepts and keywords, but also the same semantic relationships between those concepts. Finally, after comparing the question graph with all of the sentences in the research papers, the sentence with the greatest amount of overlap with the graph is returned to the user along with the paper that sentence was found in. Overall, InfoForager goes far beyond the state of the art to understand the deeper meaning behind your question. If you'd like to hear more about this, my colleague, Dr. Stephanie Lucan, and I will be available at our booth today, the U.S. Army CCDC Army Research Lab booth. So that is how we quickly pivoted our own research to try to do our part in this fight, to help medical researchers do their scientific research more efficiently. I'm proud of what we've managed to do and all that CCDC has done as a command, but there is so much more to do, so many more critical needs that remain unaddressed. With that, I look forward to hearing more about how the startups presenting in this session have rapidly innovated to help address COVID-19. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Claire. That was very interesting and very a little bit above my head, but hopefully for our startups that will be in their wheelhouse. And so at this point, I would like to introduce our startups to tell us more about what they're doing in the fight against COVID-19. And so the first company that we're going to introduce is Maxwell and Jason McClure. Maxwell is a company that is the only one in the world developing a tissue-safe broad-spectrum viricide. Did I get that right?
You did. My name's Joshua, though.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joshua.
Yeah, no problem.
Go ahead, take me back.
No problem. So I'm Joshua McClure, CEO of Maxwell. You're the first of the DoD and the defense industry to hear about this new drug class. I have 6 minutes to introduce a completely new biotechnology to you, so bear with me. You can contact me at joshua@maxwellbiosciences.com with your questions. Maxwell Biosciences is developing a completely new class of drugs. Our drugs mimic the human immune system, only better. The peer-reviewed evidence for this is well published in dozens of top journals like Nature. Similar to Moderna, we can program our drugs to attack previously unaddressed pathogens. These peer-reviewed articles show the drugs are effective against antibiotic-resistant bacteria, difficult fungal infections, limited types of cancer, and importantly, viruses. In fact, our first product is a tissue-safe viricide which destroys SARS-CoV-2, the COVID virus. Unlike our antiviral competitors, our drug completely destroys a virus. Our drug has been tested as safe at NYU, Stanford University, and Texas A&M, with an optimal therapeutic window in mice and in advanced human organ tissue simulations. Our total addressable market is $105 billion, so we compare to other billion-dollar biopharma companies like Moderna. Let's talk about how this programmable drug class works with and mimics the human immune system. Your white blood cells destroy every kind of pathogen, bacterial, fungal, and viral, with a potent molecule called LL37. LL37 is incredibly versatile because it defends your body by killing almost every pathogen, but it's delicate and lasts about 6 minutes in the body. We have made a drug to mimic LL37's potency and versatility. Our stronger man-made version, called a peptoid, took 30 years of research by top US scientists at the US Department of Energy. It lasts at least 24 hours in the body, and we can virtually program our peptoids to fine-tune against specific pathogens. Here you can see we attached a powerful side chain to the nitrogen instead of the weaker carbon, creating a stronger, longer lasting drug. This is your immune system essentially in an Iron Man suit. We bought the patents from the Department of Energy. We own them outright and they expire in 2030. Now it's months away from human trials. Our military forces are currently highly vulnerable to militarized and natural pandemics. This is a remarkably broad spectrum anti-infective. It's a rapidly effective drug we believe should be available for every warfighter and their families. We're asking for the Pentagon's support in accelerating this schedule that you see here. Preclinical IPOs have a recent history of success in biotech. That's our plan. Here's our go-to-market and drug pipeline. I'm Joshua McClure. I'm a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and helped develop highly classified technology for the warfighter while serving in the U.S. Air Force. I have over 18 years of experience as a technology CEO. Dr. Kent Kirschenbaum is our Chief Science Officer and is experienced working with DARPA. Mark Pomeroy is a former Johnson & Johnson Vice President of R&D. Steve Purse is a former Chief Technology Officer of Sprint and a public-private board director. Dr. Annalise Barron is our co-inventor and scientific co-founder at Stanford University. And our two lead investigators are Dr. Gil Diamond at University of Louisville and Dr. Jeff Cirillo at Texas A&M. Here are the investment terms. I understand that many in the audience are not investors and are members of the DoD. We're currently in talks with 4 publicly traded biopharma companies and have $13.2 million in soft commitments with $1.4 million in hard commitments. Here's our forward-looking statements disclaimer required for companies prepping for IPO. And from all of us at Maxwell, thank you so much for your time and attention today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joshua. Okay, so up next we have Henry with MDBox. And MDBox is a company that helps patients get diagnosed and treated for the COVID-19 virus and other common illnesses. With that, I will let you take it away, Henry.
Hi, how you doing? So I'm Dr. Henry Legier. I'm the CEO and founder of Reliant Immune Diagnostics, and our platform is called MDBox. And so I assume that you're able to see my screen right now because I just see my own presentation. But I basically grew up in a military environment. My mom was stationed at Bergstrom Air Force Base. My dad was at Fort Sam in San Antonio. Went away to UC Berkeley, studied chemistry and economics, then to Columbia University in New York City for medical school. Then I did an immunology fellowship at Harvard, Brigham and Women's, was in the special testing development lab at Mass General, and then started the immunology division at MIT Medical. About 5 years ago, I stepped out of practice and started building this enhanced telemedicine platform. So it's perfectly suited for a pandemic. It wasn't built for a pandemic. It was built for any particular application, whether it's a bad flu season, a novel emerging virus. And we were able to tailor our platform around the needs of everything from diagnosis to treatment to health passports and contact tracing. And so what do I mean by enhanced telemedicine? So how are we different from just a teledoc or any other telemedicine company? Well, in addition to just standard two-way video, and all of our software is custom developed, we wanted to make sure that the quality of diagnosis and the quality of the visit wasn't compromised by the fact that it was done as a telephone call or a two-way video call. And so what that means is that we really wanted to provide our doctors and our nurse practitioners, whoever the providers are in our network, with the same quality and breadth of information as they would have in a normal office face-to-face encounter. So we integrated with Bluetooth devices that are capable of capturing and storing and uploading to our EMR medical grade images of the eardrum, the back of the throat, heart and lung sounds. And we also developed a proprietary machine vision system that doesn't rely on RGB values to be able to actually interpret any visually read point of care tests by actually reading the underlying geometry of the cassette using what we call vector orientation field analysis. So we can literally see below the limits of human eye detection. And by coupling actual point of care tests and having real biometric data, the quality of the remote care is greatly enhanced. And that's why we call it enhanced telemedicine. The enhanced telemedicine network are anybody that is trained as a telemedicine extender on our platform. So it can be pharmacy staff, it could be med techs, it could be military troops that are responsible for administering care on the front lines. It can be employer HR, designated health personnel, school nurses, team trainers, literally anybody that gets invited to our platform that spends about 2 hours training on it. So in our partnerships with some retail organizations where we take care of their employees, an employer designated HR official will be invited to our platform, and they spend about 2 hours learning the HIPAA privacy training protocols, as well as how to use our Bluetooth devices and how to perform any of the point of care tests. We've also integrated with pharmacies. We've done pilots with Walmart, with HEB. Pre-pandemic, we were scheduled to be in 23,000 locations by the end of 2020. So the pandemic hit us particularly hard, but now we're back on track with that. And we should be in about 10,000 locations nationwide by mid-2021. But we've actually now had more traction because of the pandemic with schools, with charitable organizations, with cities, governments, municipalities. And one of the great things about our platform also is that it's really a la carte. You can either you could just purchase tests from us. You can license the software, use your own provider networks, and it's very adaptable. Visit types include general visits, medication refills, sports physicals, sinus pressure and pain, vomiting, diarrhea, and then a whole host of other visit types. And then we coordinated a series of visit types around use cases for the pandemic. So there's an integrated COVID visit that can be initiated by a person on their smartphone. And then based on how we triage them, they're given recommendations. If they do a telemedicine visit, they can do it from home. They can be shown where they can go to do an enhanced visit where testing is offered. And we also do pop-up events for different organizations, whether it's just serologic based or whether it's just antigen based. And so I spoke a little bit ahead about the a la carte features. The home-based daily symptom monitoring and triage was part of our RPM, remote patient monitoring platform, that we had already developed and integrated with devices. And then we also coordinate and schedule testing events. We've done several events for various cities, counties, employer organizations. And our antigen-based tests include both saliva, oral swab, and nasopharyngeal collected PCR-based tests. And right now we're averaging about 48 to 72-hour turnaround. We have the only FDA-compliant finger prick, not venous serology testing platform. And we have a right of first refusal from 2 manufacturers of the 5. There were a lot of serologic tests that were approved on the market under EUA, and they were pulled off by the FDA recently. There's only 5 approved EUA serologic tests. They're all venous. And we have the one partnership that is finger prick. And because they do not manufacture in the United States, they've signed an FDA technology transfer with us, and we're now raising money to actually build a factory. We have already operations going, and we're producing 30,000 tests in the United States per day, and we want to scale that up to 500,000 to 1 million U.S. manufactured serologic tests, and they are finger prick approved. And then we also have our ongoing monitoring dynamic health passport generation. And we've partnered with several different solutions. We're agnostic to how we do contact tracing. And so it can be user initiated, it could be device handoffs. And I think one of the companies presenting later is one of these solutions. It's not one that we're presently working with, but we're agnostic and we're willing to work with anybody. The registration process is simple. An individual can self-register, or we can register people in mass. And we basically send daily text alerts or in-app reminders to check in, tell us about your ill contacts, your risks, your exposures, any occupational changes, and then your symptoms, your temperature. And then if you have any of the enhanced tools at home, if you have any of the integrated Bluetooth devices, we can automatically extract that and get a higher quality risk assessment. Based on that, we do an AI-based triage, following CDC and NIH guidelines. And then if we recommend testing, we actually tell you where you can find a testing center that's nearby. And we coordinate with public health departments, with different agencies, and share that information and help schedule it. And then many times we're actually the boots on the ground under the tents with our labor force, actually working side by side with governments. We just did a public-private event with the city of Austin a couple of weeks ago at a church, and now we have 2 more events coming up for uninsured Hispanic folks in the city of Austin and down in Hayes County as well. And then our telehealth solution has integrated with smart scales, blood pressure cuffs, pulse oxes, over 120 different Bluetooth devices, including some chronic care devices like blood glucose devices. And we're the only national telemedicine company that has integrated with a professional version of TytoCare to provide the medical grade images of the eardrum, the back of the throat, the heart and lung sounds. The tests that we have on our platform include flu, strep, coronavirus, allergy prick testing, drugs of abuse. And we actually have under FDA submission right now with Helgen a combined flu A, flu B, H1N1, and COVID antigen-based rapid test that's visually read in 15 minutes. and we're hoping that'll be approved and hitting the market for this forthcoming flu season. And our machine vision is patented, and this is how, I mean, you literally can see below the limit of human eye detection. And for interested folks, we have a whole tech presentation. It can explain how that works later. These are some of our partnerships. We've sold tests directly to branches of the military, to the National Guard, to the state of Texas. And we also are rolling out with many of these retailers over the course of the next quarter. And we're right now raising $15 million at an $85 million pre-money valuation. We previously raised $13 million at a $50 million pre-money. Of that, we still have 4, 2 in cash and 2 in inventory and large POs that should quickly accelerate our revenue pipeline.
All right.
And
I'm going to stop you there.
That's it.
This is great. And if we have time later, I'd love to hear more about what you're working on.
Yep, perfect.
Awesome. So up next, we have Tarun with Return Safe. And I understand he was having some technical issues with his camera. So Tarun's just going to share his slides and I will let you take it away.
Okay. Can you see my screen okay, Sean?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I'm Tarun from Return Safe, and we are a biosecurity company. We just formed the business about 4 months ago, right when the pandemic started. And the reason we did it is we looked out and, when you look at the history of these major outbreaks, it's easy to recognize that COVID-19 is obviously not the first and it won't be the last. If anything, we have an increasing frequency of these kinds of outbreaks. And one of the things that people seem to be gravitating towards is this idea of a vaccine. And as our team looked out at which of the previous outbreaks have been handled by vaccines, the results are kind of not very conclusive at all that vaccines are the answer. If anything, the way that we have stopped major outbreaks in the past has been through interventions like screening, testing, and tracing, not by developing a magic bullet vaccine. So our goal is really to create this vital infrastructure for biosurveillance and case management to prevent these outbreaks. We call this biosecurity, analogous to cybersecurity, protecting companies against threats like viruses and hackers. We think that this moment calls for the creation of a new industry category, a new type of company that's focused on biosecurity. And what is biosecurity? Really, we think of it as like 2 different components. Part of it is biosurveillance. How do we get all this data that's necessary to make good decisions? And then make those decisions, whether we quarantine somebody, isolate somebody, contact trace, et cetera. And as part of that, we've really looked at the platform as a whole. And we think this really needs to be more of a platform, not an app. Because we need to do daily screening. We need to figure out how people are feeling every day and what symptoms they have. We need to do testing. We need to figure out who to test, how to get that test data back to the people that are making decisions. We need to manage the people that have active cases by making sure they're quarantining or isolating. And we need to contact trace. So, and no one company can do it on their own. So part of the thinking for us in terms of building this as a platform is to make sure that we work well with other companies that are also in the space. The way we got started is as a nonprofit open source project about 4 months ago to build contact tracing technology for the public sector. And that nonprofit is still around, and it's called Corona Trace. And you can see our website at coronatrace.org. So in order to solve this problem, I think it starts with assembling a world-class team. And Jason and I started a company called Mutual Mobile, which is one of the largest app development companies in the country. Jiku and Margaret built and sold a company called Kinvey, which is a leader in enterprise helping companies build apps for their internal employees that's HIPAA compliant and very secure. And our chief medical officer, Dr. Gillum, built what became the 2nd largest electronic health record system in the country. So we're trying to strike a balance here between what is good for the employers and what's good for the employees. And in doing so, we are taking a risk management approach by combining screening, testing, and tracing in the right combination, making sure the data is flowing seamlessly between these three systems to enable what needs to happen. The way the app presents itself is every employee has an app on their phone. They complete a daily check-in every day with their symptoms, their fever, and then they're given a recommendation based on a set of rules, which we call a policy, whether they should come into work that day or stay at home that day. We've built into the app the capability using Bluetooth to have a social distancing alarm, so the phones can vibrate if they come within 6 feet of each other. And we've added the ability to integrate the test results and contact tracing into this application as well. As part of the platform, we've gone out and partnered with the leading point solutions in each of these areas. So what if the employee is not being honest, or maybe they have a reason to be dishonest? Then you have to kind of incorporate some sort of verification system like the system here from Athena Security that does a really good job at tracking temperatures. So the contact tracing portion of the app, we have about 3 different ways to do it. One is through the app itself, using Bluetooth technology and GPS technology in the background. The second is through hardware, where we're able to deploy these beacons as ID cards or lanyards that are able to collect this data. This really only works well in indoor settings and requires some amount of infrastructure, these Bluetooth gateways that you have to deploy. So that takes a little bit of time. And the third way is what we call manual contact tracing. And that's just an old-fashioned logbook. Who did you come into contact with? And just asking people and sharing the responsibility of monitoring exposures with your employees themselves. Everything on the back end is very configurable. You get all the data back to HR and the facilities manager. We've integrated with 8 of the top 10 HR systems that are used across the country, and all of the leading identity management systems, so that we can have a single sign-on experience. As I mentioned before, it's a HIPAA-compliant backend. We take security incredibly seriously. We have a HackerOne project where we encourage people to hack us and find vulnerabilities, because there's privacy concerns in handling this kind of secure information. And we've also now started to integrate into building access management. This is showing how you would do that manually, but we've started to now integrate with the ID card system, so you can limit access to the facility to people that have completed their daily survey. So that's the presentation. Good spot for me to wrap up.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Tarun. Next up, we have Dave Copps with Worlds, and he is working on a mobile passive testing platform that doesn't require DNA. Drive up in your car, open a window, and have results in 15 minutes. Take it away, Dave.
It's actually 15 seconds, but thanks. Everybody see my screen?
Yes, we got you on there.
Great. Okay. Well, my name is Dave Copps. I'm the CEO of Worlds, a software company based in Dallas, Texas. We are a spatial AI company, so we're building software that enables organizations to see and sense their worlds, their physical worlds, through the lens of AI. So you're probably asking, what does an AI company from Dallas have to do with COVID-19? Well, on March 9th, a funny thing happened on the way to the office. My partner and I were in Houston talking to a large energy company about our ability to use AI with chemical sensing to detect chemical leaks and save lives. Well, that was the day that COVID really emerged as part of our daily lives and became a national conversation. Long story short, we started asking ourselves just how far we could take this chemical sensing. Could we actually detect COVID through breath? So, what we did, what I do know is that current testing sucked. The invasive tests are dangerous to administer. They require trained personnel to do, and they can't be administered at scale. If we could design a solution, the thought occurred to us, if we could design a solution that didn't require blood, saliva, or respiratory samples, but rather just a puff of breath, we might have something. So that would enable all of us to go back to work safely by enabling viral detection at scale, and detecting infected individuals who need medical attention, quarantining them away from the uninfected workforce. So that's what we've done. We've created a kiosk we call Worlds Protect. So Worlds Protect is by combining chemical sensing with what we know really well, artificial intelligence. We create the possibility of a nationwide network of sensors that will provide early warning for the detection of the communal spread of COVID-19 and even the detection of new viral outbreaks before they reach critical mass. So we've established some very powerful partnerships, a public-private partnership with the Air Force and the University of North Texas. And we actually have had some very incredible results. So we had, we did a lab testing. So we actually acquired some lab samples, COVID-19 respiratory samples, and performed some tests, and we had some incredible results. Our results really far exceeded even our highest expectations. After analyzing samples from a national lab, we've actually identified 40 unique biomarkers that are unique to people that have COVID that do not occur in patients that did not have COVID-19. This is a huge breakthrough. Now the next thing to test would be, can we detect those same or similar biomarkers via breath? So our partnership landscape is accelerating. It's growing bigger and bigger. We've partnered with Intel to have our internal embedded compute power provided by them and their Nook device and internal PC. Form factor and kiosk development is being worked on by Very, the largest state-up desk company in the world. And additional research will be performed by the state of Texas, the COVID Strike Force, and Texas A&M. We're also considering partnerships with other companies to explore additional use cases for the technology. Our timeline is accelerated. We're actually currently conducting airborne tests with human subjects to prove airborne detection. We're in process with the FDA on emergency use authorization and expect a certification sometime in late August. The early results from airborne testing are very, very encouraging. It's showing that we can indeed detect critical markers associated with COVID-19 via breath. And I finished early.
That never happens, Dave.
That never happens. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think what we're going to do now is bring up all of the participants, and we're actually going to do a Q&A. We've got questions that have come in from the audience, and we will be dropping those into the chat for you guys kind of behind the scenes to take a look at. And we will roll from there. So I'll probably just call on you so that there's clarity about who I'm asking. But if at some point you do want to respond, just drop it in the chat and I will get to you. Alrighty. So the first question, there was a whole lot you guys discussed there, and these solutions are incredible. And so the first question I have, and I'm going to ask this question to Tarun and Dave. I know your background, so I'll target you guys on this one. But what we're seeing with COVID is unlike anything else we've ever experienced. We need solutions like yesterday. And so you've both mentioned, partnerships that you've developed, investments, that sort of thing. Those kind of rapid partnerships are super crucial. What has been the response you've seen from partner companies? How is it different from previous startups that you've worked with? And Dave, I'll let you take that one to start.
Yeah, this is certainly a new environment, and we're noticing a much higher level of urgency. This is my third company. I've built and sold 2 companies based on AI and machine learning. This is my third, and I've worked with government and DoD and a lot of different organizations that are part of government. And right now, the response and the speed at which we're receiving these responses is unprecedented from my experience. So I'm happy to report that there does seem to be a very strong sense of urgency amongst people who really want to get to a solution as soon as possible. This EUA approval, being told that we'll have that in 6 weeks, and it's mind-boggling to me. And having large organizations like the Air Force and just to come to our side and to offer to do anything they can do to help, state of Texas, the COVID Strike Force, and it's been a very, very different experience. It does make you kind of wonder, why does it take so long otherwise? Does it take a national crisis to kind of remove all the barriers for acceleration?
Yeah, absolutely. Tarun?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I keep saying it really takes a village for us to deal with this crisis. To think any one company can do it on their own is just foolish. And I think we're very much seeing a lot of willingness to work together and partner, less competition, more collaboration across all the companies that we've reached out to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to go to Joshua and Henry here for more of the biopharma side of things. You mentioned working with Joshua. You mentioned working with developers who are working on the vaccine and developing these pharmaceuticals. Can you paint a picture for us for what you think sort of the next 6 months will look like? What can we expect?
Yes. So we're working with top 20 big pharma companies. So we're working currently with 4 different companies in parallel talks with them. They're interested in various different pathogens. They're assuming that the U.S. government will likely give us a large grant and put us into Operation Warp Speed. That's an assumption right now. We have not been granted that, and as we all know, politics plays a part in that, and so we're approaching it from several different angles and having to do things that we haven't been, we don't have experience with, dealing with Washington D.C. agendas where it's not just the pandemic itself, right? There's many different things happening, especially during an election year and various different budgets and all that. So that's something startups aren't used to. We've brought in some consultants that are helping us with that, and then also some of the big pharma companies have given us some advice on how to go about that. We've got a request in for a $1.3 billion grant in order to take over 2 factories to produce our drug in 500 kilogram batches that would, within a year, give us the ability to have doses for 100 million people. So that's there's a lot of logistics involved, and it's nice to have vice presidents from Johnson & Johnson and others involved, where they have the network where we can reach out to the big pharma folks to get us going. I think what you can look forward to in the future is very soon you'll see images of our various different drugs destroying the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And then you'll see more and more safety data coming out showing advanced simulations of human tissues. And then also we have tests in pigs that those data should be released within the next few months.
That's awesome. Henry, what about you? What do you see on the horizon, for MDBox and for just writ large?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we've seen, it's unfortunate that it took a pandemic to kind of wake up some of the just the normal processes that are in place that have been barriers. We've been in operation for about 5 years, and now in the last 3 months, we get daily requests from the FDA to actually speed up our clinical trials to get in-home approval that links our vision system to many of these point-of-care tests. Not just for coronavirus, but for influenza H1N1, so that when the next flu season hits, that we're able to distinguish respiratory symptoms across different pathogens. And, you need to have, and it was well said before, that, you can't have one company that does everything. And this has really been a great time of collaboration between startups and big companies and big pharma to try to meet the needs of the American people and people of Texas. The next pandemic could be, there's right now an H1N1 that's circulating in China that is more vicious than the H1N1 we had 9 years ago. And there are villages that are on lockdown because of H1N1, not because of novel coronavirus. And we've got to have processes and FDA review procedures in place that make us adaptable and flexible to any emerging pathogen, not just, getting past this current pandemic.
Absolutely. All right, we have a question here from the audience, and this question is for Tarun. Can you share some more details about the anonymity and privacy protections for users?
Sure thing. Yeah, this has obviously been in the news a lot about the privacy issues with regards to contact tracing, and something we've spent a lot of time thinking about. And I think it goes back to what are our values as a country? About 100 years ago, brave men and women fought on the battlefield to fight for our civil liberties, proving that here in America, our liberties are just as important as our lives. And I think it says a lot about who we are, that even in the middle of a pandemic, we're not willing to give up our privacy. And so we think privacy is just hugely important. Now, it's also in the middle of a pandemic, not the time for a science project to figure out how to do something that's never really been done before. And there've been proposals around decentralized, approaches and blockchain and things like that. The approach that we've taken is to actually have a fairly standard model around privacy and security, which is to have a central authority that is trusted and make sure we're not gathering any information that we don't need. And the information that we gather is only used for one purpose and one purpose only. So for example, collecting people's location all the time creates a national security risk on top of a privacy risk, right? So we're not doing that. Instead, we're using Bluetooth technology to detect proximity, because it's not people's location that matters, more so whether they're close to somebody else. That's all you really want to know. I also saw another question in there about how do we deal with seniors? And one of the things we're really proud of is our initial deployment was at a nursing home. That was our first customer. And that's really the heart of where this crisis really is. It's the eye of the hurricane, where 44% of the deaths in America from COVID have been inside of nursing home. So making sure that the app is something that really safeguards the lives of the elderly and the vulnerable is hugely important to us. And a lot of time we've spent thinking about the design and the experience of the product to make sure that it works for people that are elderly.
Yeah, that's great answer, and that's really interesting to see how you guys have baked that into to the product. So I guess my next question is for Dave. I think this question might have been sort of generally to everybody. So if anybody has a response to this, welcome to join in. But the question is, have you all reached out to DARPA? Is this something that any of the platforms you're building, have you contacted them and use them as an opportunity to develop? Dave, why don't you take that one? Oh, I think you're on mute there, Dave.
We're fairly nascent in this project and our exposure to DARPA. I have worked with them before in previous companies. I've been told that there is a project at DARPA, a grant that they're looking to create a handheld mass spectrometer. That's something that we're interested in participating in. So if anyone has an introduction there, that would be good. But we are pursuing there's one or two DARPA grants that we've been made aware of that are directly relevant to the work that we're doing. So we would we'll be making those calls shortly.
Cool. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? All right. Last question before we jump to our next event for today, which is the startup crawl. Who do you guys need to meet? Who do you need an introduction to? How can our community help support you?
For me, it's testing. We are now in airborne trials, so we're testing how effective we can be at detecting COVID-19 or any other virus for that matter via the breath. So without swabs or samples, just walking up to a kiosk, literally giving a blow of breath. We need access to testing. We have our IRB, so we actually have our own IRB right now, and so we can use that. We also have one with the Air Force, so we have two IRBs we could use to do that. But if anyone has access to live human testing opportunities, would be very interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, Dave, maybe we should meet offline and talk about, because we have active clinical trials going on for both antigen and serology, and it would be just another step. We could combine IRBs. That'd be great.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks.
For Maxwell, it would be we need the government to understand what it is that we have. It's a completely new drug class, and we now have the data to be accelerated. But getting access to the people that are able to understand what it is that we have, because currently the working group out of BARDA rejects any therapeutics offhand. They don't have time to review therapeutics right now, so they're only accepting vaccines for review. So that's a broken paradigm. When a company comes up with something that's not within the box of a current paradigm, that's something that governments generally don't do, super well. So this is, we're approaching it from several different angles, but we can always use help, right? So we've got a lot of people trying to help us with that, but I think this is a perfect audience that could reach out and probably change things for us.
Cool. Tarun?
Yeah, for me, I mean, we're definitely probably interested in people that are looking at how do we assure how do we create a bubble around a base or a ship. How do we make sure that the people coming in are kind of already tested, and then ensuring that if symptoms develop because somebody develops symptoms, how do we do contact tracing? So anybody that's working on trying to solve that kind of problem for the military, I think we'd love to talk to.
All right, very good. Well, thank you all so much for being here today, and to Claire for kicking things off. We really appreciate the hard work that you guys are doing to find solutions to get us through this crazy time. All
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah, thanks for allowing us to participate. Yeah, thanks.